Good morning, Bridge. How are you guys doing today? Awesome. Okay, so I want to start by telling you that Kevin gave me an impossible task yesterday, and I've ran down this hole that I'll never get out of. He said, hey, can you, I don't want to tell you what to say, but can you briefly just kind of describe or give a definition of God's glory? And I'm like, sure, no problem. And then I sat down and I'm like, oh my word. And I responded with a picture. That yesterday morning I woke up and there were big, huge, dark clouds. There was the sun shining through red leaves and just bursting across the lake into the different colored trees. And I'm like, that was God's glory this morning. Like, I knew it when I woke up. It was like he said, good morning, Ivana. And I'm like, and then I got thinking further, and I'm like, well, God's glory, it's the times that bring me to my knees. When I recognize who I am and who God is. And then God's glory is what I beg God to show my kids. Like, Lord, if you show them your glory, they'll never, ever walk away from you. And so I just want to welcome you. I want to welcome you guys here, and I want to welcome you online. And I just want to tell you that I am excited to get to be here today because I expect God's glory to be shown. And I don't expect it for you. I expect it for me. I have prayed and I've asked God just to show his glory and to turn our hearts to see who we are in light of who he is. So at this time, let's just pray as we enter God's presence and we beg him to show us a little glimpse of who he is. Lord, I am unworthy. I'm unworthy to have the sun rise and the sun set, and for you to show me who you are and who I am. I pray, Lord, that your glory would be shown here in our church today, and that you would receive glory from us. We love you, Jesus, in your name. Please stand with us.
Our souls awake to you and lift a song. And we see the things that you have done, and still we know the best is yet to come. There's more to come. And open the gates and let your glory come down. Chains with songs of victory. You're changing everything. And open the gates and let your glory come down. And open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Open the gates and let your glory take your place. Come flood this place. No one else could take your place. And come have your way. No one else could take your place. Open the gates and let your glory come down. Open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Open the gates and let your glory come down. Open our hearts and let our worship pour out. He is worthy of our praise. Amen. There's a reason why the curse of sin is broken. And there's a reason why the darkness runs from light. There's a reason why we stand here now forgiven. Jesus is alive. There's a reason why we are not overtaken. There's a reason why we sing on through the night. There's a reason why our hope remains eternal. Jesus is alive. Praise the King, He is risen. Praise the King, He's alive. Praise the King, death's defeated. Hallelujah, He's alive. Hallelujah, He's alive. There's a reason why our hearts can be courageous. And there's a reason why the dead are made alive. There's a reason why we share His resurrection. Jesus is alive. Praise the King, He is risen. Praise the King, He's alive. Praise the King, death's defeated. Hallelujah, He's alive. Hallelujah, He's alive. They could not ignore it when all of heaven's roaring. Hell, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? The world could not ignore it when all the saints are roaring. Hell, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? But they could not ignore it when all of heaven's roaring. Hell, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? They could not ignore it when all the saints are roaring. Hell, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? Praise the King, He is risen. Praise Praise the King, He's alive. Praise the King, death defeated. Hallelujah, He's alive. Hallelujah, He's alive. Hallelujah, He's alive. Amen. Go and take a seat.
Good morning, Bridge. I have a couple things to announce for the ladies in the congregation and those who are listening online. First of all, lots of things changed this year, and one of the things was we were not meeting when Mother's Day happened. So Mother's Day little gifts are out there on the counter, and we would love to have the mothers please take these and use them. They're a cute little thing of notepads and a pen. And so, you know, in May, we were all in our little hidey holes, and we were not here to be able to hand those out. Another thing that had to do with being all cloistered away, and I found that, probably not unlike you, there were a lot of little and big things that changed and that I had taken for granted. Little things like meeting with another lady for coffee. Big things, to me anyway, like meeting with my ladies' Bible study. We are excited to say that next week I'm going to start a ladies' Bible study, and I'm very excited about the topic. It's Jesus and women, and it takes a close look at Jesus' interactions with women in the Bible and how that relates to us today and what encouragement we can take from that. So I would encourage you, if you are interested in doing that, please let me know today. We're doing it a little differently in that there's a video that you'll need to watch before you come, and I will send you that video link. But one of the cool things we also have is options. So if you're not ready to meet in a small group, we're going to be down the hallway in one of the classrooms with the windows open, so wear your coat or bring a blanket. But if you're not comfortable with that, you could do it on your own. But I would still need to know if you're interested so I can send you the video link, and also how you could get a hold of the book, because that would be important if you're doing it on your own to do the workbook. So I hope to hear from a lot of you today, and I will be hanging around after church out in the foyer area. So let me know, and I will put your name down and send you that link. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcia. Just a couple of quick announcements by way of saying thank you to some people. I know that many of you get our e-letter and also read the bulletin, but I wanted just to say a specific word of appreciation to Jonathan Langdon. Jonathan, I know you and Missy and the kids and Todd and Michelle and their kids and perhaps some others are watching online right now, but I just wanted to say thank you. Jonathan has put in hours and hours and hours, not just recently, but in the past, incrementally installing a bunch of video cameras for safety and security and so forth. And I just wanted to say thank you. That one of the beautiful things about Bridge is the church is owned by the people, so many, and Jonathan is one of those people who've invested well. And so when you see Jonathan and Missy next, or send him a text or something, just say thank you for that extra effort. We're very, very grateful for this added value to us as we want to make our facility as safe and secure as possible. And then I just wanted to say, again, a word of appreciation to our many Bible teachers who share the load, but especially to David Hulings. David, we are so appreciative of you jumping in and volunteering not just to help us to diagram and outline Hebrews, but you have dealt with the problem passages in a masterful manner, at least from my perspective. All the hard stuff from now until until Bridge is done, I'm going to give to David, or Todd, or Tim. But we just appreciate your teaching so much and looking forward to it today. Speaking of sermons, by the way, next Sunday here, well, actually at both campuses, we're going to be setting aside Hebrews for a week. And I'm going to be talking to you out of 1 Peter chapter 3, one of my go-to passages, and that's the text where it talks about being ready to give an answer. As you know, we're facing increasingly challenging times, both in America as citizens as well as in the church as believers, as we see the culture continue to take steps toward erosion and those types of things. And I want to just, next week, out of 1 Peter and some other texts, I want to be able to challenge you. I want to be able to encourage you. And I want us to walk out of here with hope. God is still on the throne. He's not surprised by any of this. And so for several weeks, I've been thinking about some things that I want to share with the congregation. I hope that you'll either be here or be here online. But both campuses are going to be dealing with a standalone sermon on those things, which I think you'll find to be of tremendous encouragement. In just a moment, we'll pray. And I recognize that, especially if you follow the church calendar, the universal church calendar, you'll recognize that this is Reformation Sunday. Why is that significant? It's significant because hundreds of years ago, some believers took a stand for grace alone, faith alone, Scripture alone, Christ alone, and for the glory of God alone. And that word alone could preach sermon after sermon. And so today, in recognition of Reformation Sunday, I invite you to pray along that spirit with me as I lead us. Our Father, I want to thank you that you are first and foremost a God who has graciously communicated truth to us. The heavens declare your glory. Creation screams loudly that there is a creator behind the complexity of our universe. And our consciences, though often seared in humankind, we bear your image, and we know deep in our hearts what is right and what is wrong. And I thank you for in those and other ways you speak to us. And I thank you for your revealed word in this document that we call the Bible, for empowering men to write it through your Holy Spirit, through preserving it to all generations in a form that we can understand, and for by your Spirit reminding us that it is true, it is reliable, it is uniquely inspired because these are the very words that emanate from your heart to lost humanity. And I thank you that through those words we can come to faith in your Son. And we can trust him alone as the only hope for our eternal destiny. We are so grateful that you have revealed yourself. And I thank you for the promises that you provide hope. And I think of another Bridge family who grieves this week, Judy Wagonmaker, and the homegoing of her sister. And though there is hope, there are still tears. And though we trust you, there are still questions of why and timing and all of that. And I'm guessing that many people here carry burdens, and we trust that you, God, will be the all-sufficient one to us. We love you, and we continue to worship with our voices and from our hearts, and we give attention to your word because it is true. We pray these things through Christ our Lord. Amen. Please stand with me as we continue to sing.
Upon a hill, a perfect Savior, upon that day, the greatest love, the punishment that should have fallen on us, upon him, upon his head, a crown of thorns, upon his heart, a broken world, the wage of sin, the weight of our transgressions, upon him, Christ has died. We are forgiven in Christ alive. We are the risen, and He shall come again. Praise the King, praise the King. Upon His heart, His name is written, the King of Kings, and Lord of Lords. We're pouring out a song of praise together upon Him, upon Him. Christ has died. We are forgiven in Christ alive. We are the risen, and He shall come again. Praise the King, praise the King. Christ has died. We are forgiven in Christ alive. We are the risen, and He shall come again. Praise the King, praise the King. One name upon our lips, Jesus. No greater name than this, Jesus. And every knee will bow, every tongue confess, Jesus, Jesus. One name upon our lips, Jesus. No greater name than this, Jesus. And every knee will bow, every tongue confess, Jesus, Jesus. Christ has died. We are forgiven in Christ alive. We are the risen, and He shall come again. Praise the King, praise the King. Christ has died. We are forgiven in Christ alive. We are the risen, and He shall come again. Praise the King, praise the King. Christ has died. We are forgiven in Christ alive. We are the risen, and He shall come again. Praise the King, praise the King. Let no one caught in sin remain inside the lie of inward shame, but fix our eyes upon the cross and run to Him who showed great love and bled for us. Freely you bled for us. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling over death by death. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Christ is risen from the dead. We are one with Him again. scheme of hell, the scoffer's crown, no burden great can hold you down and strain. You reign forever, let the church proclaim. Christ is risen from the dead, triumphant over death by death. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Christ is risen from the dead, we are one with him again. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Oh, death, where is your sting? And oh, death, where is your victory? And oh, church, come stand in the light. The glory of God has defeated the light. Sing it, oh, death, where is your sting? And oh, hell, where is your victory? Oh, church, come stand in the light. Our God is not dead, He's alive, He's alive. Christ is risen from the dead, triumphant over death by death. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. We are one with Him again. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Christ is risen from the dead, triumphant over death by death. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Christ is risen from the dead, we are one with Him again. Come awake, come awake, come and rise up from the grave. Dear God, we sing with joy today that you are risen. God, you trampled over death. Death, where is your sting? And hell, where is your victory? God, we can stand and rejoice that you forgive our sins and that you are Lord over all. And so we sing and we encourage one another today, God, and give you all the thanks and all the praise for all that you have done and for all you are. In your Son's beautiful name, Jesus, we sing and we pray all these things. Amen.
That was the glory of God. Right there. So this might just be me. This sounds a little hot. This might just be me, but have you ever been going somewhere with your family and you're so excited about where you're going? I'm like, every billboard tells you you're getting closer. Oh, look at that, kids. We're almost there. And you're getting closer and closer, and the anticipation is getting greater and greater. And then one of the little ones says, Daddy, I have to go potty. Okay. It's probably just me. But suddenly my foot accelerates. And I'm like, honey, you can hold it. And for about 1.5 miles, we're good. And we're getting closer. The billboards are now like multiple. You're almost there. And then the other little child goes, Daddy, I have to go potty too. And I'm like, what is it, contagious or something? And you're okay. You're still okay because it's getting closer. We're almost there. Just hold it a little bit. And then your spouse says, because this is non-negotiable, I have to go potty too. And you want to keep going. And you would. You would. except at that exact moment, a warning light comes on in your car and says you're almost out of gas. You thought you had enough to get all the way there because you just didn't want to make the extra stop. Now you are compelled to get off the expressway, almost where you want to go, to get gas, to go potty, to get treats, to eat. And you're like, we were almost there. And then when you're done, you get on the on-ramp, and now you know you can make it. The passage we're going to look at today is the on-ramp. We are going to see something just marvelous as we come out of the third and fourth warning passage that's been trying to teach us. Okay. This was working before, guys. Oh, there we go. I don't know what I'm hitting. Hopefully I'll keep working. I hope. We've been coming out of these warning passages about the perseverance we need to have in faith. If you're visiting with us, we're studying the book of Hebrews, and Hebrews is probably best set for a Bible study more than it is for expository preaching for 30, 40 minutes in a morning message, because there's no doubt in my mind after last Sunday, I created all kinds of things in your head, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But this is not working here. All right. So we're gonna talk about this from a different point of view today. We've been talking about the warning passages, and the first one that we looked at was in chapter 2, and it's about drifting. Tim, can you just go ahead and click the next slide for me, and I'll tell you when to click as we go through. Click it again. So it's about drifting. It's about the possibility that you and I could, by neglect, drift away from Christ. Go ahead, Tim. The next one was about disobeying God's word, actually. That by disobeying God's word, someone who professes to be a Christian could drift away and fall away from Christ. Go ahead, Tim. The next one was about becoming dull. And that's where we started about 4 weeks ago, that you and I need to understand that we could, because of all the pressures in life that are happening to us, despite seeing all the signs that Christ is real, that he's superior to angels, he's superior to Moses, he's superior to the Old Testament covenant, we could become dull. And then we finally came to the next one, which is it working? Cool. But, whoops. Whoever's pushing stuff now, stop it. Come on. Oh, it's wonderful when you're in control of these things. And it's funny, as I prayed all morning for this equipment to work really well today. So we could depart. And again, he's talking about people who believe in their hearts. They've had this wonderful experience for Christ. They've actually tasted of the things of God. They believe it in their heart, but nothing is produced in their life, and they're really just falsely believing, and then they could depart from the faith. And that's where we're at today. You might have been a little bit taken aback by the warning passage last week, and you should be. I want to go through each of the warning passages really quickly, because I want you to see how serious God is about our Christian walk. He is serious about it. If you're not serious about it, you are already not in line with what God is trying to say. If you're one of these thinkers in your head that my ability to be in heaven or my ability to have a relationship with Christ came because I said something with my mouth, but I don't have a journey with him, I don't have a walk with him, you need to pay attention to this. One of the warning passages was in chapter 2, and notice what it says. I mean, that's just a little scary. How shall we escape if we neglect our salvation? How about number 2? The warning passage 2 we already looked at. It's possible that our disobedience to fail to believe could cause us to fall away from a living God. And then this one was really stark when we looked at it. We understood that God may look at us, and if he permits, we move on, and he'll permit based upon our faith in him. And then this one last week certainly set us back a little bit. It's impossible that if someone professes Christ but has no fruit in it, and they literally take a step away and deny Christ, that they could return back to repentance, because there remains no more sacrifice for sin. That's it. There's no other option. And then we're going to look at this one in chapter 5, or chapter 10, the fifth one, after we're done here for a few weeks. How much worse punishment the Lord will judge his people. It's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God. Is that a little scary? Yeah. And look at chapter 12. Oh, sorry, this is the second part of chapter 5, of chapter 10, the fifth one. If he shrinks back, my soul will have no pleasure in him. Think about that. He is warning us about something. The warning light is coming on. Chapter 12. This is the last one we'll get at sometime in June. If it did not escape, much less how will we escape if we neglect or reject him? For our God is a consuming fire. So last Sunday, a number of you came up to talk to me, and I had lots of great conversations, and it was spurring a lot of thinking, and we were studying God's Word. One person out there in the hallway, right over there, came to me and said the following. You know, these warning passages are causing me to think deeper about this thing about eternal security. My first response was, oh, no. God guarantees that when we come to him in faith and he produces in us, we are assured, we are guaranteed. In fact, we're going to see that. That was my first response to say to the person. And then as I was driving home, I was like, God, through his word, has got that person exactly where he wants them. And he's got us exactly where he wants us. Because what he's trying to say is, I want these warning passages to what? To spur you on to perseverance. He wants us to be on the edge of our seat about something, not because we're afraid that God won't come through, not because we're afraid of something, because he wants us to understand the awesomeness of God, of what he's assuring us of. That's why this passage today is the on-ramp to get us back to where the author actually started. This is a fabulous piece of passage to look at. Let me just go through the warning passages one more time and give you something really cool in each one. In the first one, he talks about that those who persevere, the Holy Spirit is going to produce in them through signs and wonders of wonderful things in their lives. Amen? This is in the warning passage. Warning passage number 2 says that we what? Share in Christ. We are his what? House. Remember that? He wants us to understand that. That's the blessing in the thing. Number 3, if we mature, we will be given discernment to discern between evil and good. Is that not a blessing? This is what he's trying to say to us. Don't sit in this place of dullness, but rather understand what God is trying to do as we yield to him in faith, in obedience. That's what he's trying to do. I'm going to skip number 4, and I'm going to go to number 5 because we're studying 4 today. Look what he says. But those who have faith preserve their souls. That's pretty plain. God is saying we have preservation. We can persevere in faith, and he will make sure it's finished. And then chapter 12, therefore let us be grateful for receiving the kingdom that cannot what? Be shaken. Do you understand what God is trying to do? Now, if you've listened to me long enough and heard me preach, in fact, if you actually go out and heard me speak in public with the public speaking stuff I do, you'll find out there's one thing true about me. When I get to the end, I run out of time. I hire 3 or 4 people to come and listen to me on a regular basis to critique me. They just sit in the audience, and they write up a critique, and they send it to me, which I cannot stand, to be real blunt with you. Tom, I think you did that for me. Did you not once? You came and listened to me speak and gave me a whole dissertation. No, you didn't really. But I enjoy that. And almost every time, they say, you kind of rushed at the end and didn't give us the stuff at the end the same way you did at the beginning. So today, I thought I would start at the end so that you can get it. Because if I miss this, I pretty much miss the whole thing. And I know my time, I'll get so excited about this beginning stuff, I'll forget the main point here. And the main point is this. Here is the blessing in the 4th warning passage. We have a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul. Okay, if that does not get you excited, then you probably might have something going on here, okay? It gets me excited for a couple of reasons. First of all, the doctrine is just awesome, but it had the word anchor in it. And since we lived on a boat for 10 years, anchor is a big deal to me. I was really going to spend a lot of time just talking to you about anchoring, but then I realized I was really just talking to you about nautical boating stuff, and that would not help you at all. You all know what an anchor is, right? You all know what an anchor, how it works and everything, okay? We got that? He is saying to us, you and I have an anchor that is beyond the curtain into the Holy of Holies to save our souls, and we are held in that way. Now, I will spend a little time on this. The first time I went out in our boat to anchor in and we set the anchor, and anchoring is an art. It's a science and an art. It's not an easy thing to do. But you have to anchor it just right, and you have to know current, you have to know wind, you have to know, and then you're supposed to be able to go to sleep while you are anchored in this spot. Can I tell you that is not always true if you're trusting on yourself setting the anchor? Does that make sense? I want you to understand what he's saying. We have an anchor, but we are not the ones who set it. And that is refreshing. This last time we were in Florida, we went out and we had just purchased the boat, so we were going out with another couple of friends to anchor in this little island, and we were going to sit there for 3 days on anchor. And I just bought the boat, so you forgive me, I have this electric anchor, so you just hit a button, which is really kind of cool, and the anchor's supposed to go down, right? It goes about, and then it stopped. I want you to know I had an anchor. I had an anchor line. The anchor line is called a rode, okay, the anchor rode. I had the line, I had the anchor, but here's my boat like this, and here's the anchor just dangling like this. There's about 30 boats. You always watch other people anchor, because it's kind of cool to watch how stupid they can be. And so I'm up there, and I'm getting frustrated because I'm hitting this little thing, and nothing is happening. My friend had already set his anchor, and he calls over to me. He said, "You all right?" I said, I got it. So I go out front, and Paul, you'll appreciate this because you know where you at. You know how bad I am with mechanical things. I'm looking like this. Robin walks up to the bow of the boat, and she goes, "What's wrong?" "It doesn't go out. It's not moving." "Well, what's wrong with it?" "I have no idea. But don't tell anybody else I have no idea." We ended up having to go beside them, and they tied it alongside them for 3 days. We're side by side, tied to their boat, because I failed to do the number one thing you should do after you buy a boat, and you're going to go anchor in for 3 days. What did I fail to do? Check the stinking anchor, David. Can I just say to you, we do not have that problem, because when you read this text, he sets the anchor. It is strong and sure, and you and I have nothing to fear. And for that, you and I better be praising God, because that is the glory of God. That's where I'm going. Don't let me forget that when I get to the end here, okay? All right, let's remember one thing before we move on. Where was he going before? Remember, he started these warning passages with this statement. I want you to move on because I want you to see the high priest after the order of Melchizedek. That's where he's going. And I think Brother Tim and then Eric are going to be taking this all apart in the next couple times we meet on Hebrews, and they'll explain to you everything you ever needed to know about Melchizedek. Right, Tim? Yeah, he's got this. So just make sure you know this is where he's going. That's the billboard you've been seeing. That Jesus Christ is a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. That's out there. Chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9, and most of chapter 10, that's what we're going to study. And that's where he's going. Before he goes there, he wants to give us one more kind of kick forward in our walk with him so that we are ready for that. Because the comment I had with the brother out in the hallway after last Sunday was basically saying, how do I know that my salvation is sure? And I could just see the writer of Hebrews, I don't know for this for sure, but up in heaven going, yes, you are now wanting to know so much about Jesus Christ, the high priest, after the order of Melchizedek, because that is the anchor of our soul, okay? So I broke this down 3 ways. today, and we're going to try to get through it all. The first one is this. There is a promise that we're going to read, and it's based upon God's divine plan for one purpose, and that is to encourage us. Okay? By the way, if you have a bulletin with the outline, I really messed up because I changed it all after I sent the bulletin in, so you're going to have a hard time with it. I just saw you right there. Okay? The second one is this. There is an oath, and the oath is based upon the divine personhood of God, and it's given to us. This oath is given to us in order to offer us encouragement. The last one is this. There is a hope, and that hope is based on a divine provision of Jesus Christ, the high priest, after the order of Melchizedek, and it's designed to give you and I security. Those are the three things that he's trying to tell us in this passage, verses 13 through 20. So that's where we're going with it. Let's start with the first one, a promise based on a divine plan in order to give us patience. Let me just underline a couple words here, and that's all we're going to do today is kind of just look at the words and see what he actually says. The first word that jumps off the page here is Abraham. In fact, this original slide had, for when God made a promise to Abraham, this is in about 30 font. I think I put Abraham in 120 font. Because if you're a Hebrew Christian and you hear the word Abraham, there is something that happens in your brain when you hear Abraham. Abraham is a primary example in the book of Hebrews. We saw him in chapter 2. We're going to see him here in chapter 7. And we finally see him in chapter 11. In chapter 11, we're going to see about the faith of Abraham. In this chapter, we're going to see the faithfulness of God toward Abraham. Abraham's a big deal. Abraham is probably the best example for this group of believers. Remember, this group of believers are being persecuted. They are having struggles. They are having to see if their faith will ever show anything. And they're having to wait for God. There's a reason he picks Abraham. Because Abraham was in that. Do you remember the story of Abraham in chapter 11 of chapter 11 or 12 of Genesis, where God calls Abraham to go to a far country which he knew not of? And he said, okay. He went home to his wife, Sarah, and he said, honey, we need to get the moving company because we're moving. And Sarah would say, where are we going? I have no idea, but we're not stopping until we get. I have no idea. God just told me to go. What God? Yahweh. Who's Yahweh? She would have no knowledge of this. And yet, Abraham stepped out in faith. And then Abraham needed to have a child in order, because God is, and we'll see this in a minute, God is going to multiply him. And yet he had no child. And then God said, no, I will give you a child. And now the man is 100 years old. And he's still waiting. And finally, he has a child. He had to wait. So I want you to understand there's a reason he uses Abraham here. This is significant for us as a correlation between your life and my life. As God asks us to do things, and we're saying, but when, God? Where, God? How, God? And God says, hold on, because I'm simply going to ask you to have a promise. Okay. How many of you have ever made a promise to someone? How many of you have ever made a promise and kept it? Nice. Keep your hands up. Do not put your hands down because you know what's coming. How many of you have ever made a promise and failed to keep it? Some of you are like, oh no. What's that? You're saying, yeah, because the way I said it, but everybody, yeah. See, this is a trick question. So you caught it. Thank you. Because you were like, what did he just say? You know what's really cool? The word promise occurs a lot in the New Testament, but no New Testament book more than Hebrews. God is a person who makes a promise, and here's the cool thing. God has never not kept his promise. When I was younger, my life verse, and actually password to all my accounts, not anymore, so you can't use this, was Romans 4:20 and 21. He staggered not, Abram, he staggered not at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strong in faith, giving glory to God, being fully persuaded that what God had promised, he was able also to perform. And that's a powerful, powerful verse to think about because God made a promise to Abraham. He made several promises to Abraham, of which Abraham believed in faith that God would come through. I have failed multiple times to my children, to my wife, in keeping my promises. From as little as, yes, dear, while you're gone, I will take out the garbage, to as major as, never mind, you don't need to know that. I have failed. The one thing we have to understand about this passage is the beauty and the veracity and the glory of God's promises. It's amazing. So what was the promise? The promise was, surely I will bless you and multiply you. Abraham is known as the father of all faith. And God said, I will bless you and multiply you as sands of the sea. Not necessarily nationally, although that certainly did happen, but what he was talking about is spiritually, that any person who becomes a person of faith will become a child of Abraham. That's the essence of what he's trying to say to us. And he said, I will multiply you, and I'm going to do that through your son Isaac, who he waited till he was 100 to get. And he finally gets Isaac. And you know what God tells him to do in Genesis 22? He says, I want you to take Isaac up to a mountain, and I want you to sacrifice Isaac to me. I remember my older daughter coming to me one day, and she said, Dad, she had children. She said, Dad, I'm really struggling with a God who would ask him to sacrifice his son, Isaac. Of whom, by the way, God said, through Isaac, I will bless you and multiply you. I'd like to say I was profound and had such divine intervention in my mind to answer her. I just looked at her and said, I'm right there with you. But God asked him to do this. So he brings him up to Mount, was it Moriah? Mount Moriah, right? Moriah, and he puts him, in fact, you know who carried the sticks up that day? Isaac carried the sticks. And he says to his father, Dad, where is the lamb? And Abraham said, God will provide it. And he come up and he said, I don't know how this even happened, but he said, Isaac, jump up on these sticks. And he bound him to it, and he picks up his knife. And here's what it says in chapter 11 when we get there. He knew that if Isaac was this is how you live on a promise, folks. If God promised me that I would be blessed and multiply my seed through Isaac, yet he's asking me to crucify him, the only logic, and this is where I love that faith is logical, based on the promise of God, he logically said this, well, then that would be the case. If I kill him, God's going to have to raise him from the dead, which is exactly what it says in chapter 11. Can I say to you that when God asks us to live on a promise, he's not messing around. He is saying, if I promise, I promise. And that's what this passage is about. This last warning passage, we're all about us and our work and how do we stay safe. That's what it could come across to you. When in reality, the whole thing is, he's trying to drive us to understand if God promises, he will deliver. Even if he has to do something completely illogical in our head, which sounds like it is logical to God. And that's what a promise does. And so what did Abraham do? He patiently waited and obtained the promise. Now, Jerry, I'm going to say something, and I know you just moved over to Mercy Emergency. So this was prior to you getting there last week. I just want that to be established in case I have to go to emergency in a couple weeks and you're there. Okay, got it? Okay. So when my wife broke her collarbone, we had to rush to the hospital. Now, this is bad because I'm wearing biker spandex. Stop it. Stop it. So, but that's all the clothes I had. And my wife is. And we show up at emergency wearing shoes that click-clack when we walk on the floor. This looks really bad. This is not how I would go out in public. I know I embarrass my grandkids when I wear clothes like that. But anyhow, we're there, and I walk up and I said, my wife is really in a lot of pain. She broke her collarbone. We think that's what it is. Can you get us in? And I look, and in the emergency room, what's the first thing you look at when you walk in? How many people are there? And I look, and it looked like this place. I'm like, are you kidding me? And the lady looked at me, she said, we'll get you in right away. So they did is that triage where they come in right away? Cool, I got that down. And she looks right at me and she goes, sir, just so you know, I can tell you're anxious. We are a little bit packed today, and we are a little bit low on staff. But I promise you, we're going to see your wife. So I click, 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 sit down in my spandex with my wife, and I patiently waited for her promise to come to fruition 2.5 hours later. Might be an exaggeration. It was 2 hours and 15. You can go back and look it up, okay? I was getting furious. Because why? Because waiting for a promise to be cashed is one of the hardest things David Hulings ever has had to do in his entire life. I am a more instant person than you would ever believe. I don't wait for anything. I'm like a first adapter to new things. Terrible. I cannot wait. You can pray about that. This is a prayer of mine, okay? Do you know what Abram had to do? He had to wait for the promise, of which, by the way, we will read in Hebrews, that he didn't receive until you and I received the promise. Promises by God will come to fruition, but they don't typically come to fruition in our timing. In this case, our salvation is a promise, and it will come to fruition. And that's what he's trying to tell us, because it's based on the character of God, which we're about to get to. So that's the first thing, a promise based on God's divine plan that I will bless the world through faith, those who have faith in me, through Abraham, through Christ, so that you and I can be encouraged. Beloved, we can have patience. Be patient with God as he works in your life. That's what he's trying to say. Second piece, an oath. We're going to talk about the oath based on the divinity, the divine personhood of Christ and God, in order for us to be encouraged. So this is the passage. These are the verses here that you want to look at in your Bible as we're going through. And I know this is a little smaller font because I'm trying to get it in there. So look at your own passage, verse 16 through 18. I'm going to highlight a couple of words. The first word I'm going to highlight is for. By the way, I'm obsessed with the fours. I've told you that. There's about 35 more to go. And if I'm preaching, you'll hear every one of them. These are very important. There's a connected tissue between what he just said about the promise for our patience and what he's about to say in the oath for our encouragement. So he uses the for. Before we go on, we need to see who he's talking to. He's talking to people that he refers to as notice he includes himself, who have fled for refuge. Stop right there. We need to grasp this really quick. He is talking to people who have recognized their need for an anchor in their life. If you're someone here and you have yet to come to understand that you are someone who needs, you are someone who needs an anchor for your soul, then he's not talking to you. This is an understanding that you and I are seeking a refuge. That's what he's saying to us, okay? The other part is this. I love this. He's writing to people who are heirs of the promise. Do you remember how this book started? That God in the last days has spoken to us through his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things. And Paul says we are heirs and joint heirs with Christ. He is saying to us this. This was written to people who have recognized a need for someone because they're looking for refuge, someone who recognizes that they are destitute, and yet they are heirs. And the heirs is what he was talking about, okay? So make sure we grasp that, all right? The first thing I want to look at is this concept of an oath, that the oath was a confirmation. It was guaranteed by an oath. We'll get to the word guaranteed in a minute. The verse 16, sometimes a little bit confusing because basically what happened is the author simply is telling us what people do in the world. What people do in the world is they have someone who makes an oath. Has anybody ever had to testify in court? You had to put your hand on a Bible and swear and give an oath that you would what? Tell the truth. Did you? I'm just checking. Probably a good thing you said yes, because who knows? Sorry. Yeah, so you know what that means, right? I had to give an oath. That you understand the concept of that. Some people are a little bit objecting that God would use, well, if the world does it, then I better do it. And that's not what he's doing here. The author is simply saying he's going from, you're going to like this, a known to an unknown. You guys know what it's like to give an oath. This is what God does. God is saying, I give my oath that this promise is sure. He's giving an oath, and he's giving that oath based upon himself. Because who else could God swear by but himself? By the way, there's no devotional today because Eric's preaching next Sunday. So next Sunday you'll get the devotional for this and that. And your first study is on Monday of next week, is to study why in James and Matthew 5 through 7 does it say we shouldn't swear oaths, and yet God does. Figure that out. I'm not going to spend any time there, but that's your first study, okay? He gives an oath, and I love this word. The word is guaranteed. And the word guaranteed there really is for someone to come alongside and give a confirmation, an evidence of something, that it's true. And I didn't realize that part of my life, of the work I do with people, is kind of tied up in this word. I often am called in schools when two people are having a frustration and they're really at each other. I have one of these going on right now. I mean, it's really, really bad. It's one of the worst I've seen, of which they're not talking to each other and they're sabotaging each other's work, and it's going on. And I love these people, but they're really kind of confused, okay? So I meet with one, and they tell me everything bad about the other one. And then I meet with the other one, and they tell me everything bad about the other one. And my job is to make them not hug each other at the end, but eventually get so they can work together. You know what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to guarantee the one that the other one doesn't actually feel that way. And that she doesn't feel that way about him. My job, they are looking at me, and this has been 5 months now, and I'm actually getting right there to that point. They've had their first conversation together without me. It was a disaster, but it was so cool that they were in the same room because they swore they wouldn't do it. And I said, did anybody bleed? No. Then you did good, okay? But my job is to help them, and I come alongside and say, no, what he's saying is true. And, okay, I believe you, David. I do not believe him, but I believe you. What she's saying is true. Okay, David, I believe you. That's that word right there. That God comes along and he says, my promises are true and you can count on it because, it's not David, because why? I'm God. The promises of God are guaranteed with an oath that God gives us based on who he is and his integrity of who he is. That's why the rest of this comes in, okay? So God desired to show a more convincingly to the heirs, to us, the promise, the unchangeable character of his purpose, that he will bless us, okay? And he did this because it's impossible for God to lie. That's what he's trying to say to us. This is based on his personhood. I love that you started out with the glory of God, that you gave her that assignment, and that's what we're all talking about, because I had no idea you were doing that, especially when you texted me this morning. I'm like, this is exactly it. This is the glory of God, that I wake up one morning, or every morning, and I recognize that God in his character, is it impossible for him to lie. Therefore, if he is the anchor of our soul, what? I have an anchor. That's what he's trying to say. Last part. This is for our encouragement. Not just our encouragement, but to hold fast. To hold fast through faith that God is the anchor of our soul. That's why he's writing this. And the anchor is that God has promised to deliver us all the way to the end. That's what he's trying to say to us. Despite all the warning passage, for those who sincerely believe Jesus Christ in their heart and they are allowing God to produce something in their lives, they have a promise that is based on the character of God for our encouragement, not for our discouragement, as we hold fast in faith. But notice, it's not just encouragement. I love this. It is strong encouragement. I don't know about you, that's redundant. Marvelously so. Isn't it great? I want you to be encouraged. That by itself says what? I don't even know what that says. It means be encouraged. It's actually the word come alongside. God's coming alongside you and lifting you up and carrying you. And yes, be encouraged. Oh, no. Be strongly encouraged. So, Ashton, you have a big game this week? I'm encouraging you because I know how good you are and how your team is. I'm encouraging you. Is that cool? Watch this, dude. I'm gonna up my game. I am strongly encouraging you. You see how I went like that? That's what the word is right there. See, encouragement is a period. Strong encouragement is an exclamation point followed by 4 more exclamation points. He wants you and I to be strongly encouraged in our walk with Christ. The whole world is coming down on these people. Nero is about to crucify some of them just for their faith. Their synagogues have kicked them out. Their families have denied them. And he says in the middle of all that, be encouraged. He says, be encouraged strongly. That's what he's trying to get at right there. I'm sorry, that probably doesn't get you as excited as it does me, but I'm like I'm a loser. If it's not for these words right here, I'm not here today. God is strong encouragement to me to hold on to my faith, to say, God, you will finish this. I knew I was running out of time. Let's go to the last part here, okay? Or wait a minute, we still have more to do here, don't we? So that by 2 unchangeable things, yeah, this is the main point here. 2 unchangeable things, in which it is possible for God to lie. So what are the 2 things? I'm going to give you what the standard interpretation is of what are the 2 things that he guarantees that he's talking about, that reason we can have encouragement. Then at the end, I'm going to give you what I think might be the possibility here, and I really want to put my money on that last one. Here's what most people will say. The 2 things are the promise that God would multiply Abraham through his faith, which extends to us, and the oath based upon God's character. Those are the 2 things. And so he guarantees the promise, with an oath. So that, big deal, so that by 2 things, you and I can have hope. Okay? So the 2 things are probably, in most people's mind, the promise and the oath. I'm going to give you an alternative view of that in just a minute, what I think the 2 things probably are that not everybody holds to, but you can let it debate in your head. Because I think that the other 2 things are pretty cool. These are good, but I'll take the other 2, okay? So let's move to the last one, the hope that is before us based on a divine provision so that you and I can have security, which is what my brother said to me last Sunday. I'm beginning to wonder if I have security. And I'm like, oh, no, we have security. So take a look. Let me show you a couple of things here. First of all, we have this hope that's set before us. The hope is always something set before us. Hope is not something you ever have. This is not a world's hope. Oh, man, I just hope God does good things. This is a hope that is set before us. It's important to understand that. We have a hope that is secure in something. He is worth waiting for because we have this hope set before us. And I like this part. It's a hope that gives us an anchor that's beyond the curtain. Okay, when we get to chapter 10 or 9 and chapter 10, we're going to study this curtain more. This is the same word that's used all the time in the Bible for the veil that was between the holy place and the Holy of Holies. This is where this is where I'm going to get my 2 unchangeable things in a minute. It's where the high priest went once a year to offer sacrifice. But Christ went into the Holy of Holies beyond the veil to offer himself forever as one sacrifice. That picture we're going to study when we get to chapter 9. The veil was a curtain that was hung up. Now the Talmud says to us that about the time of this writing, the curtain at this point was, I think the dimensions are like 60 by 30, and it was about a hand breadth width. Okay? Some people say it took 300, I don't know that, I'm just telling you what I read, 300 priests to hang the curtain. It was so heavy. And it hung, and no one could go beyond the curtain except the high priest once a year to offer sins for himself and for the people. That's what we're about to study, what all that word picture is and what it means. Here's what you and I need to know. Jesus Christ, the day he crucified, it says the curtain was ripped from top to bottom in the temple. It physically was. Historically, it was ripped. Because what happened is Christ broke down the barrier between us and God and went in and secured our salvation. In fact, chapter 10, verse 20 says the curtain is his flesh. He tore his flesh and went in and went to the throne of God and offered himself to his Father as a sacrifice for your and my sins. I'm telling you, the word picture here is simply amazing what God did for us. And my anchor rod, the line, my anchor rod from my vessel is tied to the other end to him. Now, on my boat, when I first got it and the anchor didn't work, I had about 20 yards of chain, because we're down at Cape Coral when we're there, so you have coral. So when you anchor, the coral could cut the rope. So you got about 20 yards of chain, and then 175 yards of line, you would call it rope, but if you're on a boat, never use the word rope. It just shows you don't know what you're talking about. So I won't charge you for that, just so you know, okay? So I didn't do this because I can't do mechanical things. I went out and bought 200 feet of chain. So I have all chain on because I just feel comfortable with chain. You get where I'm going with this? You and I, to our heart and our soul, have a chain beyond the veil, torn apart to get us into the presence of God, anchored to Jesus Christ. That's what he's talking about right there. And my hope is not tied in me. My hope is the fact that God tied his chain to me and it's hooked on the other end to Jesus Christ. That's what he's trying to say to us right there. Where Jesus has gone as a forerunner. You're going to like this. The word forerunner really means, in fact, we get our English word precursor from it. It means someone who ran before. When I was in the military, we would have guys that they would be the forward observer. I have no idea what these people are. I think they were for Columbus. That's what I think, okay? Because they would do this. All right. Sorry, I had to get that in. They would just go out and tell you that the enemy was out there. In reality, he's staying with a nautical term here. Big boats, especially when they came into Alexandria, were so big, and the rocks and everything in the harbor were so bad, they would literally have little boats come out, and guess what they would do? They would take the anchor in the little boat, and they would pull the anchor to a place in the harbor, and then everybody on the boat would take the other line, the road, and guess what they would do? And they would take this big ship, pull it right into the harbor without any problems, because the precursor boat did what? Went before and put it in the rock. Is that not just a beautiful picture? That's what we're going to study from 7, 8, 9, and 10 of Jesus Christ taking himself. He's the boat. He's the anchor, comes to the Father, says, I submit myself to you in obedience. I was crucified. I was raised again. I am now the anchor, and he's on the other end doing what? Is that not just beautiful? Keep that picture in your mind because we're going to study it for the next 5 months. It's beautiful. Okay, well, that might be too long, but you get my point. So I'm back where I was supposed to start. And I'm almost done. I'm hurrying. Steadfast and sure. Tim, how's your arm? How's your hand? Good? Tim fell in his driveway this week, so be praying for his hand. He fell in his driveway. He tripped on a raise in the thing, right? So the word sure, Tim, you're going to love this because you talked to me right when I was studying this word. It was so cool, and I didn't want to bring this up. The word sure is not tip, not trip. It's trip with a negative in front of it. It means you and I will never trip. That's what it means. The steadfast is solid ground. That's what it is. You and I have a never tipping, solid ground anchor to our soul. And if that doesn't get you excited, then you probably aren't saved. Come talk to me later. So that by two unchangeable things. Let me tell you what I think the two unchangeable things might be. And I'm going to steal something from Guthrie, who really does a really good job in Hebrews on this. The two unchangeable things is that Jesus Christ is a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. He is not just a high priest, but he's after the order of Melchizedek. Those could possibly be the two things. In the context, I can understand why we say promise and oath. Got it? But really, his whole point this whole time is to tell us that you and I have a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. He's a high priest after a certain order. And that's what Tim's going to break down for you in a couple of weeks because it's amazing stuff. So some of you know I have lots of grandkids. I have 14 grandkids and 4 great-granddaughters. This is one of my great-granddaughters. She's 3 years old. Her name is Mila. You don't know what's happening in this picture because she's looking at a little toy with intensity. You don't catch it because you got to know this. We didn't know it, but little Mila has had trouble seeing for 3 years of her life. And so they got her glasses. I need you to see this video of her with her glasses. This is what she said when she got the glasses on. Mommy, my house, I love it.
Goosey, what do you see? Tell me. What are you doing? What are you doing that for? What do you see?
Peace.
Can you?
Can I tell you the beauty of seeing that face? We had no idea she can't even see things. When my daughter, who's her grandma, came over there and she just gazed at her. Can I just say to you, this passage that we looked at is the glasses to put on to see the warning passages. It is to see the glory and amazingness of who God is. That's what he's trying to get us to see. Do you open up God's word and go, huh? That's what Mila's doing right there. Can you see that spiritually, that God is trying to say to you, I have given you promise. I am giving you encouragement. I am the anchor of your soul, giving you steadfastness, sureness. And Christ was the forerunner, the precursor, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who went what? Before us. That's what Jesus Christ did. Let me end this way. I want to give you a couple of, these are my takeaways that God has done in my heart. I invite you, when you're home today by yourself, to say, what have I learned from these warning passages for yourself? I'm going to give you what I'm praying into my life. I'm not saying to you, these are your takeaways. These are mine. The first one, our salvation is not a ticket to someplace. It is a lifestyle journey that God has us on. When you got saved, you did not get a ticket that you get to use someday for heaven. My salvation is, sorry, I just put that on you. My salvation is a journey. God is producing something in my life. This next one really struck me. Sins of omission matter to God as much as sins of commission. Commission is when you do something that's sinful. Sins of omission is when you don't do something that God wants you to do. James says this, for him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. God in these passages is really talking about you and I failing to do the things he wants us to do, belief and walking with him and allowing him to produce fruit in our lives. It's sins of omission. 2 or 3. God's answer in the storm of life is sound doctrine of his word in our hearts. He doesn't send us to a psychologist when we're having trouble. He said, let me show you the glory of God, of myself. The last one for me is this. The work of salvation is done by Christ. It is done by Christ in us and through us, being empowered by the faith that in that finished high priestly work that he does. Why? Because he is a priest forever after order of Melchizedek. Hold it for 2 weeks. Tim is right here right now. I want to talk to you about Melchizedek. That's what we're going to do. Why? Because Christ is better. Stand with me if you would, please. Notice what I outlined today. By the blood of the eternal covenant through Jesus Christ are 2 things we need to grasp. Kevin's going to lead us in a song. Please forgive me that I went a little bit long. I know that's probably got to be frustrating sometimes, but I just wanted you to get this, okay? He'll lead us in a song because we need a song of praise right now. We just need to sing a song of praise, okay? Let's say this together. Now may the God of peace, who brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, by the blood of the eternal covenant, equip you with everything good that you may do his will, working in us that is pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen.
And, oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all thy world thy hands have made, and I see the stars And I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, and how great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. Now, we don't have slides for this, but I'll lead you through verse 2. When I think and when I think that God is Son, not Spirit, sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross, my burdens gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. And then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. And then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come, and when Christ shall come, with a shout of acclamation, and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. And then I shall bow in humble adoration, and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. And then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. And then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. And then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee, how great thou art, how great thou art. Let's keep singing that this week. All right, you are loved, and we'll see you back next Sunday.